When you think about relationships that exist in your life, you may be amazed at how many of them are really business relationships. Now, that's true. A lot of your relationships probably began because of a professional situation that led to a good friendship. And building strong relationships is essential to the success of your sales efforts. So whether you are trying to win over a new prospect or close an important customer or even a lost customer, building relationships is the real key to success. So why is that? Strong relationships will help you build credibility. They'll help you build trust faster and strengthen and retain customer loyalty. They'll help you mold buyers into loyal advocates and gain buy-in, and ultimately a deeper engagement in the buying process. Relationships make a difference. So in this episode, Greg and I discuss why building relationships is important. We look at some strategies for building strong relationships and then some of the challenges that go into building relationships. So if you would like to know more about why building strong relationships is the key to your success, then stick around. You're in the right spot. Hey, we're back, and I'm here with my friend Greg DeMarco, and we're talking about building relationships, the foundation of sales success. So one of the first things we want to talk about is why in sales is building relationships so important. And I know I have my point of view from the real estate perspective, but Greg, why don't you just give me an update on why you think building relationships is so important?
Well, thanks, Don. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're all in the people business, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's nice to say, I guess, we deal with companies or that kind of thing, but we don't. We deal with people, no matter what it is. People, it's people that we deal with, we connect with, and that's what human beings really want. They want a human connection. And that's why it's so important for building relationships. You have to know how to do it. It's the cornerstone of anything is communication, but it's being able to build that relationship with somebody and to nurture respect, trust. Our ability to be able to show that we're an expert in what we're doing. But you have to be able to deal with people, and you have to be able to build that connection with them. So that's what it is to me.
Yeah, I know in real estate, we have a lot of people go with just referral business. So they only deal with referral business. And you're not going to get referrals from people that don't know you. People typically do business with people they know, like, and trust.
You got it.
Right. So if somebody knows, likes, and trusts you, then they're more likely to refer you to someone else that they know, like, and trust. So
Absolutely.
So that's I think one of the big reasons why building relationships is important. But I think more than that, you have to look at it and say, okay, building relationships is important because living in community and offering value to people is important, whether you're selling them something or not. Just knowing that you're building value, that you have a relationship with other people. Because when you have relationships, then like, define a relationship. You have a relationship with someone that cares about you. That I care about my friend Greg. I care that
But you're a Montreal fan. I don't get it.
yeah. Well, I mean, Toronto is going to go down, right?
Okay, whatever.
But yeah, no, we care about people, but we do have differences, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the challenges and obstacles to building relationships, because there are things that can get in the way. But I think it's important from a people perspective. And then from that, then we can go into the sales side of it. So sales is important, but just understanding that we build relationships with people just because we want to add value to our community, add value to people. Because if I add value the best way that I know how to my community, and you add value the best way that you know how to your community, and everybody else did the same, we would have a much better community. I mean, at least that's what I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, when you said something that, we hear in sales a lot, which is it's that know, like, and trust factor. Well, you're not going to get that without building that relationship with somebody, because what you're doing is you're building the trust. You know, do you care about that person? Because that's what everybody's thinking in their head. You know, does this person care about me? Do they have my interests at heart? You know, uh, are they going to try and take advantage of me? You know, on the flip side, and you can't get any further with anybody unless you build that connection. And a large part of that has to do with how we treat people. And that's why I say it's if you're in sales, put it this way, and this is what I've told a lot of people I've trained in sales, is if you're in sales, if you don't know how to build the relationship, then you better start now, or else you'll never be successful the way you want to be successful. And it's amazing to me how a lot of you know would-be salespeople don't understand that concept. They think it's about pushing the sale, right? But it's not. It's all about building that relationship. And as you put it, if you want referrals, and there's certain industries that rely on referrals, you're not going to get them unless you build the relationship up.
Yeah, you talk about pushing the buttons. When you talk about that, I go back to our mutually fun days of being vacuum cleaner salespeople, and
Oh yeah,
that's what it was all about, was pushing the right buttons and asking the right questions to get
yeah.
the person to actually buy it that moment. We weren't concerned about building relationships. I don't
No,
I,
no,
I
it
don't
wasn't.
think I can't think of one person that I sold a vacuum cleaner to that that well, maybe my mother, that I
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
relationship with.
I was going to say, was that your sister or something you
Yeah,
sold it
yeah, but it was, and it's a different type of sales, So
to?
if you're in that type of sales, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it's a different type of sales. It's a different thing that we use. So if when you're selling a bigger ticket item, for sure, you're building a relationship. I know when I sold carpets, you'd have some contractors that you would work with on a regular basis. Well, you worked with them, but you had a relationship with them, and that was part of it,
Yeah,
because lots of times contractors are concerned about only one thing. And that's the bottom line. What's it going to cost me, right? Because they got to keep the cost down, and that's their focus. So if I want to give them that value by always offering them a fair price, but I don't want to always. If I have a relationship with them, then they're going to trust me that I'm doing that all the time, and I can't take
yeah.
advantage of that. I can't take advantage of that
Well,
trust.
yeah, and part of it is when you develop that relationship, you make promises
Yeah,
and you deliver on those promises, and that's where the trust starts to be built. Right? You're
yeah.
dealing with people, so it's not like you can say one thing and do another, because then they won't deal with you.
And in real estate, when I'm working with someone selling their house or helping them buy a house, there's going to be times when we get stuck. We're going to come up to a time, maybe the house is taking a little longer to sell, and there's all of a sudden this extra pressure in their life. And that's one thing. Like, one of the high stress factors of a person's life is, besides a death or whatever, is or besides speaking in public, is putting your house up for sale. Moving is one of the more stressful times of a person's life, and some people handle it well, and some people don't. I mean, it can be actually scary sometimes. But if I have that relationship with a person, I can do a much better job of guiding them through and helping them through the stressful steps of selling a house or buying a house, than if I don't. If I have no relationship with them, then the trust can go sideways in a big hurry.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think one of the most important things that a salesperson or someone starting out in business needs to understand is, we talk about this, is, having a good book of connections, and people that you've nurtured over the years. Now, if you're just starting out and you're younger, you might not have a great big book of connections that you've nurtured over the years, but you can start by making calls and reaching out. But one of the most important things, that this is what I drive home to the people I train, is You have to understand that people are people. That's what we're in, the people business. No matter what it is you're selling, you're in the people business. You're dealing with them, their family, their friends, and how you treat one, it ripples down to the whole lot. So if you're off your game and you're not actually doing what you say you're going to do, or trying to build some kind of connection by finding out about them and their families, you're not building a connection. um, and that's the worst part of it.
So let's talk about how we build those actual relationships. What kind of strategies do you have for building a strong relationship? Do you have any practical tips that people could use? Do you have a set format, when you meet somebody, or what do you actually use, Greg?
Yeah, so when I'm training people, I go in with the first thing is just having the strategy down, right? So the strategy for me, number one is, and I've told you this before, it's not necessarily to sell them anything, it's for me to understand who they are. And when you get into that mindset of, okay, focused on the customer or the buyer, let's say, because they're not a customer yet. So my focus is basically, okay, how do I get to know this person? So it's simple things, like I'm gonna my focus is on them. So when I find out their name, I use their name in the conversation. That's one huge one in and of itself. Is, okay, Don. It's nice to meet you, Don. I was hoping we could get together and just find out a little bit about where you're coming from, and what's of interest to you.
Okay, well, here's a question for you, Greg, about remembering their name.
Yeah,
I mean, lots of times I'll introduce myself to somebody, they give me their name, and then like 2 seconds later, I forgot their name. So
happens to me all the time.
do you have a strategy for remembering somebody's name?
No.
I mean, you said that's your strategy is you use their name in the conversation, and I get that. I think it's important. People like to hear the sound of their name. I mean, what I think is, I also think you can overdo that quite a bit. Like,
Yeah.
somebody says, well, they told me I should use their name, Don. Well, here, Greg, how you doing today, Greg? I mean, it could be,
Well, you've
you
got
could
to
you
you've
could
got
say,
to
Greg.
yeah.
It's not natural then, right? And you got to
No,
make
but
yourself
you have to be able to know when to use their name. Okay,
natural.
but for me, remembering their name is to say their name. It's
Yeah,
like for me, when I want to remember something, I write it down. The act of me writing it down reminds me, okay, there's a topic there that I need to remember. But so when I'm in a conversation, someone introduces, oh, this is Don. A lot of the times when I don't remember their name is right then. Is when they say, my name's Don or this and that. And you have to be focused. For me, it's using, oh, Don, it's nice to meet you. So as soon as I hear it once and say it once, right away, oh, Don, did you say? Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
I heard one person say that you could that one of the ways to help you remember the name is ask the person to spell it. But
Well, okay,
but if
Don,
your
spell
name
your
is
name.
Bob, but if your name is Bob, how do you spell? Okay, could you spell Bob for me? Bob.
Or
No, I
you
mean,
could say, is it Robert or Bob? I
yeah,
guess there's something like
yeah.
that. But then you're not really listening if you're if you're saying that, as far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
it's
But
so anyway. I think what my point is that remembering the name is not always an automatic, because we're thinking. When we're meeting somebody, we're thinking about other things, and we're thinking past the next conversation. But I like what you say about focusing on what their needs are. Like
yeah,
you focusing on getting to know who they are, and that I think is very important. I know in real estate, or any sales, but what we focus on sometimes is we say, okay, well, we have to offer them value. But if I'm not focusing on who they are, I'm not going to recognize what they value. So
of course.
I might think that what I'm offering is valuable, but if I'm not listening to what my client is, telling me, then I'm not going to that value that I think is valuable may not transfer to what they think is valuable.
Well, and herein lies what I was saying. You have to have a strategy, and the strategy, really, the most important strategy. You can come up with any strategy you want. I'm telling you, this is the number one strategy. You go in it with the intention of finding out who they are and understanding their needs, And you know, you can call it a discovery, you can call it an information gathering, whatever term you want to use. But the reality is, you want to go in there to get to know them. And for me, it's when you find out their name, my strategy for remembering is basically saying it right away. Oh, Don, it's great to meet you. Thanks for coming today. You know, something along these lines. But the second strategy, which is very important, is as you get to know them, you ask their opinion on something. You ask their advice or their opinion. Well, what do you think about this? You know, that's related to the discussion you're having. Everybody wants to be asked their opinion because people like to talk about themselves, or they like to talk, or they feel the need that when you ask them for their opinion, that they actually are valued. Wow, they're asking for my opinion on this. They must value what I have to say, and people love that.
Yeah, you could ask their opinion. You could also ask them how they feel, or how would achieving their goal, how is that going to make you feel? Because then they're getting into that conversation, because
Absolutely.
they feel something. That's how we make our decisions. We like to think we're logical when we're making decisions, but really what we do is we make decisions based on what how we feel. We make our
Absolutely.
decisions on an emotional basis, and then we justify it logically. And that's the same thing when we're building a relationship. How do you make me feel? Like when I'm with you, do I want to run away and hide? Or do I want do I want to spend more time with you?
Well, and
Maybe that's
that's really good what you just said there, because I'm often quoting Maya Angelou, where she said, you know, people won't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And it comes down to that. And I'm not getting into this touchy feely thing. What I'm saying is this: you have to be in tune with people's emotions, including your own, because that is the ticket to their desires, their inspiration, their creativity, their imagination. What do they want? And you hit it out of the ballpark there, because it is about emotion. And when you ask somebody their opinion or how they feel about something, that strikes a chord. And that's what relationship building is all about. And that's where people usually fail, is because they don't understand that it's about them.
I think that kind of leads into our next the next section here, where we talk about what are the challenges and obstacles to building relationships. And in our world today, we have such diverse opinions about different things, and we
Oh,
won't
yeah.
go into what those things are. But yeah, but when we're talking to somebody, um, how do like you and I joked a little earlier about me being a Montreal Canadiens fan, and
Oh, I
you being
wasn't joking.
and you being a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. Well, you know, those are differences of opinion. Obviously we can compare facts. I mean, how many Stanley Cups does Montreal have, and compared to how many Stanley Cups does Toronto have? So
Oh, dear.
but we won't go there.
No, we
We'll,
won't.
we won't go there, but we'll just say, okay, like there's a difference, right? So, but emotionally, uh, we have different ideas. We form opinions. We have our biases. That we recognize. If we go in and recognize that they have a bias, and that's not a bad word. Sometimes we say, okay, well, you're biased, and I think, okay, it's a negative, but we all have formed a bias that determines how we make our decisions. It determines kind of who we are, like where we're coming from, what our perspective is going to be. And recognizing what that bias is helps us to also recognize how we're going to be a better communicator with that person. And one of the clues to that is understanding their personality style. That's
Mhm.
not everything about them, but we have a style that I'm certified as a DISC behavioral consultant. When I understand more about who they are and what a little bit about what's driving them, I can better relate to them as well.
Yep.
And because if I have a bias, if I have a blind spot in my personality style, and I don't recognize theirs, um, we're not going to connect, and
Yeah.
that's going to hold us back.
Well, I think that the discussion is bang on, because we all have differences. And I talk about this in some of my classes that, it comes down to when you're building these relationships, it does come down to differences that we have. It's a filter that we have within ourselves that we kind of grew up with, right? But there are cultural differences. There
Oh
are
yeah.
language barriers. There's all kinds of things that sort of manipulate the challenges that we're going to have with building a relationship. But I think where you were headed with this personality, understanding different types of personalities eliminates a huge part of that, I find. And I've told you this before, and I've said it before in some of the interviews that we've had, is one of the biggest things that changed my trajectory when it came to improving my sales results was understanding the different personality types that you just talked about. Because it allowed me to understand and build a much richer and deeper relationship with the people that I was trying to, bring on as clients. And when you understand that, it kind of helps. You might have a cultural barrier or you might have a language barrier, but it helps when you understand the personality type so you know how to respond to their inputs, right?
Yeah. I like to use the example of my wife and I. She's a high I personality type. She's very verbal. She likes to talk. She's relational. That's how she communicates, is like that. And I'm more the CS type of person, more reserved. So when I am explaining something to somebody, I can get very verbal and give them a lot of words. Well, she doesn't want all those words. So it's like the old Charlie Brown cartoons. He'd be listening to his teacher go wah 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 wah
Wow,
wah
wow,
wah
wow.
wah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and my wife says, "I see your lips moving, but I don't hear anything coming out of your mouth. I don't hear the words you're saying. And it's because I'm trying to use my style to communicate to a person that has a different style. Now, we've been married almost 48 years, so I figured that out. Took me a long time, but I did finally figure it out. So I think we, but I still make a mistake. I still you know
sure,
still
you're
fall into
reminded
that
of
trap.
it. Uh, well, listen, I mean, and that is a good example actually, because it's two people with different personality types who have a connection, a strong connection. So it is possible. And
Yeah.
I remember training somebody not too long ago who said, I just don't understand people, man. I just don't get it. And the whole point is trying to just compromise, make small compromises, and understand where putting yourself in the shoes of other people. Man, I'm telling you, that goes a long way when you're trying to build a connection with somebody. Just put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. What would they be thinking? Why, a lot of the people that come to us, it depends on what you're selling. I mean, if you're selling real estate, it's one thing. They're coming to you because they're selling their place. It could be for a variety of different reasons. How are you going to get those reasons? How are you going to find out why they're selling their place and want to buy another one?
Could have
If
a
you can't
conversation
build,
with them.
yeah, you have to have a conversation, and you can't. They're not going to trust you enough to tell you what they want, or what they're looking for, or their reasons, or why, if you can't build that trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
As we're having this conversation, I'm thinking about different times when I've blown it.
oh yeah, me too,
I
me
can, I
too.
can think of I can think of different times when I handled it well, and I can think of other times when I've blown it. And but I think one of the things that we have to recognize is until you have to gauge your conversation, you have to gauge your relationship, and there's some things you don't necessarily want to talk about right away, because especially in the last 3 years, that have come up. And I can think of one time where it was a repeat customer, and we didn't know each other well, but we the conversation kind of slipped into politics a little bit, and I let
That's a dangerous
It's a
discussion.
dangerous discussion. And
It's like religion, right?
yeah, I didn't talk a lot about it. I just made one comment, and that was enough. I lost that deal.
And you think it was because of the politics thing?
I do, yeah, yeah. I could tell immediately. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I should have tried. Maybe I should have recognized that and tried to do something about it. So, I mean, trying to be honest here, not tell you that we're, that you and
No,
I
I
know
listen.
everything, but
No, listen, I think it's an important thing to say because there are certain things we should talk about and there are certain things that we shouldn't. And I've always believed that politics and religion, you just sort of keep out of a conversation. That's just something old school, I think, though. It's from like my dad and mom were from the silent generation, fought in World War II and all that kind of stuff. And there were just certain things, and this is part of that strategy and the challenges that we face is, there are certain things we shouldn't talk about probably because they especially nowadays with politics, everything's so divisive. That's something
yeah.
we probably should avoid. But that's a good example because it shows a real life example of why you felt that deal didn't happen.
I don't. Yeah, I think it was. I noticed immediately. The conversation changed. Their demeanor changed right away, and I'm pretty certain that was the result, or that I didn't get the business. I mean, I had followed up after, but didn't get any response. But I don't like to dwell on my failures.
No,
So I just
but
say,
it's a good thing to review
yeah.
though and find out what the mistakes are and don't do it again.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that can happen is one of our previous episode where we talked about sales anxiety. I mean, we can go have situations like that, and then it puts us into a situation where we're having sales anxiety. So what would your suggestion be? What would your recommendation be to someone who's new or newer or even anybody that's wanting to build better relationships? What would you think would be a good strategy for them to employ?
Number one, they need to think about going into the very first conversation with somebody is the intent to get to know them. Forget about the sale part of it. Now listen. Having said that, if I get the inkling that they want to buy something now, the conversation is going to take a bit of a different direction. So first and foremost, the first thing is you want to have a strategy where you're getting to know somebody. And it's not about the sale right away, it's about getting to know them. The sale, obviously, if you get the inkling that that they want to buy something right away, then the conversation is going to take a different turn. But that's the first and foremost. The second thing is focus totally on how you're going to help them and getting to know what they want. And you're not going to be able to do that until you build some kind of trust. But you being offering care and empathy and trying to find out what their needs are, that goes a long way with building the trust because then they see that you're interested in them. Okay. And then thirdly, what you want to do is you want to use their name. You want to ask their opinion and advice on certain things. This is how trust is built within building that relationship and taking it to the next level where you actually you show them that you care, right? By asking questions.
I think one of the other things we can do is we can understand ourselves better.
Yeah.
And I think to do that, take an assessment, whether it's a DISC assessment, a Myers-Briggs assessment. There's a number of different assessments. I have some free assessments on my, I call, what kind of sales animal are you? It's kind of a fun assessment. Are you a lion? Are you an owl? Or are you whatever, a dolphin? I think different types of animals have different characteristics as well. But understanding more about yourself, because when we understand who we are, then we understand how we're communicating, and then we can also recognize who they are. What their communication style is, because we can think we're communicating, but if we're not connecting with them, then there's no communication. So understanding who they are and what, more to your point, understanding what they need, what they want, helps us to gain that connection, because we can think we're communicating, but if there's no connection, there's no communication.
Well, exactly, and I think you're right, Don. I think that understanding personality types is a long way to. These are just tools that go into your box that help you to create that relationship that you're looking for, and that's really what your goal should be. Let's build the relationship, then you can help them. Once you're connected, understanding who you are and your skill sets goes a long way to understanding someone else. And that's one of the things that we teach in the courses that I do is actually who you are today, and what identifying what is your future self going to be like. So how do you want to sell? How do you want to create value for your clients? That's those are the main points, right?
Yep. Well, thank you, Greg, for your insight into building relationships and the challenges and some of the strategies that you've employed over the years. And I look forward to talking with you at our next conversation. But if you need any help, Greg's website information will be on around here somewhere. We're still going to figure that out, right?
It's in the
It's up there.
description.
Yeah, it's somewhere on there. And again, I'm happy to help as well. Like I mentioned, if you need help with an assessment, whether or not you want a free one or schedule one, feel free to contact me at on my website. So that's it.
Thanks, everybody.